Alright, so we're checking out the new GEPRC Mark5 04 Pro Edition. And the one I got here specifically is the dead cat style frame. It does come in a traditional X style frame, or wide X frame is what they're calling it. Just like their Vapor series and the previous Mark 5 series with the 03, which I did not get to review, it does come in those two styles, a dead cat versus the X style frame. And I would urge you, if you are mainly a hardcore freestyler, to not get the dead cat style frames. I always say this in my videos. Dead cat style frames are for cinematic flying, cruising. And if you're mainly getting footage from the 04 Pro camera, then you don't want your props in view, then go for the dead cat. But if you're going to be doing any kind of hardcore freestyle, then you're probably going to want to go for the wide X style frame. Now, real quickly, before we get into the video, I want to show you everything that came in the box. GEPRC, they always send a full allotment of accessories. So you do get 2 of these battery pads. I already installed one. Get a spare set of these TPU camera dampeners. The silicone ones are already installed on here, as you can see. Those are the ones that are recommended for the most vibration reduction, but if for whatever reason those don't work for you, you may want to try these TPU ones, but for the most part, the TPU ones are generally stiffer and they're more likely to get vibrations, but these are always worth their shot in case you have vibrations. And but again, as I said, that's going to be most likely going to have more vibrations than the silicone ones. Get a couple of these foam camera angle adapter things. So there's 2 different angles here. I think this one here is the more steep one. It's going to go on to the camera mounting area here if you guys are flying a GoPro. And then there's a slot there for your battery strap. And it doesn't, not a battery strap, but a Velcro strap. And they have a long one here specifically meant for mounting a GoPro, like that in that style. But you probably want to put some adhesive on here just to prevent it from sliding around. But that's if you're going to be using the carbon plate here, then these foam mounts are going to be for your GoPros with this longer battery strap. Get the little keychain here. It's made of carbon fiber. Get a whole bunch of spare screws and other accessories that you may need in the future in case some screws are lost, so they do include plenty of extras. So I have one battery strap already installed in here, and this is the other one. You can go with 2, I suppose, if you slide it under here. It's a pretty tight fit, but I suppose you could get it into this little slot here for a little bit, say if you have a little bit longer battery. Like mine's, I think for this is totally fine since I'm not doing any bando bashing. I'm not expecting a battery ejection, so I just went with 1 battery strap, but you can put 2 on. Standard set of little tools here. This is for the prop nuts, for removing the propellers and putting them on, and then some hex keys. And a couple of TPU camera mounts here, and that's if you were going to remove this carbon plate and put this on here instead. Then you have this more traditional 3 mount here for the standard GoPro for the finger mounts, and then you have the smaller style mount here. This is an M2 screw, I think, or M3 screw for smaller cameras. So you have 2 different styles of TPU mounts. Now mine only came with 1 set of props, as these green ones here you see is already installed. Usually they come with 2, but I guess now they're going to just 1, and it's these GemFan Vanny style 5136 translucent green racing and freestyle. So that's what this one came with. Comes with their standard quick start guide, standard stuff like, it looks like it's still for the 03 here, so they haven't updated their documentation yet, so they're probably going to do that probably by the time you get yours. But basic, arming information, stuff on, binding your receiver and putting on your propellers, etc. Now mine is the Express LRS version. The Express LRS antenna is here in the back, as you can see, and also mine is the GPS version. So you can get one without the receiver and without the GPS. That's the cheapest one, and of course adding the GPS and the receiver does add a little bit of extra cost. It does come in the TBS Crossfire version as well, and I believe the Crossfire antenna goes here in the back as well. Documentation here on the flight controller. It's an F722 Bluetooth HD V3 flight controller. This one I think has been out for a while. I'm not sure if I did a review on this particular stack, but it does come with an ICM gyro, 512 megs of black box data, and BMP 280 barometer. So this is, F7, pretty standard, 3 to 6S. Here's the voltage range, 5 UARTs, and of course it comes with a very nice wiring diagram. So if you are having to lose yours, you can pause the video and you can reference this for your build if you'd like. And here is the bottom part of the wiring diagram. Shows where everything is connected to. All right, moving on. Just come with this GPS rescue mode notice, and I got some conflicting information here. So it says here, factory settings do not include rescue mode. If you need to turn on GPS rescue mode, please refer to the following. On mine, now this may be old documentation for the 03 version that I never reviewed. This is the 04 version. On my particular sample, GPS rescue was enabled on an aux switch. Now, this maybe they mean that you need to adjust your radio so it's on the correct aux switch. Mine was actually set up, and usually when it's not set up, when you go to failsafe, it's set to drop instead of GPS rescue. But mine was set up. But yeah, I'm not really sure why that was, why they've sort of changed it from the way they used to do it before. But in terms of the failsafe tab here versus GPS rescue, it'll be set up like this instead of drop. I think they didn't even include that here in the documentation. It's going to be above here where it says land. But you can adjust your settings here if you'd like. But these are all the default settings that they put in, which I think is not quite stock, but it's a little bit adjusted for this particular quad. But just letting you know that mine was set up out of the box, so you should probably check yours and make sure that it meets whatever you're trying to do. If you want it on, make sure it's set up properly. If you want it off, then make sure you turn it off. All right, a few more things here. Support card, QR codes to their social media, prop direction. This is a standard props in, as you can see. So the props will spin like this in this direction. And you get your standard set of stickers. All right, so let's talk about the quad itself. Like as I said, I never reviewed any of the 03 versions of this series, the Mark 5. I did review the Mark 5 that came with the DJI Vista. So that was 3 years ago. That's the last time I actually flew a Mark 5. This is their flagship series, so it's the most expensive, but it's probably also the most refined. Of course, all the carbon fiber parts that GEPRC has been using has been good for many years. So if you're worried about arms breaking, if this is not solid, generally speaking, their stuff has been really solid overall. But in terms of the frame design here, it's pretty standard in terms of a 5-inch. So there's really nothing fancy here to talk about. 5mm arms, dead cat style frame, as I mentioned, and it's a staggered bottom plate. So you got your bottom plate here, this part in the front, that's on the bottom, it sandwiches the arms. And then they have the top section of the bottom plate that goes over the top part of the arms here, that sandwiches the arms here. That's been the same for many years. A lot of frames have used this setup here, and it's a little, not really that much different actually. Yeah, it's pretty much the same in terms of even the screw pattern. Obviously, you're going to take these off to remove the arms. I don't believe you need to take the stack screws out. Yeah, those are inside there. As you can see, it's a little hard to see. So I think you just need to take these two out, and then you can swap an arm out. You can see here all the different mounting options for the air unit in the back. You got I think it's 20, 25, and 30mm. I think the 20 and 25 are M2 screws, and then the 30mm are M3 screw. So plenty of mounting options here, and then you have the capacitor here in this little area with the zip tie holding in place, so it's nice and secure. For the motors, you got your little landing feet here, so wherever you land, concrete or whatever, it's going to basically keep the carbon nice and clean and won't hurt the screws. And then you have your arm bumpers here on the end, so the motor is nice and protected, as well as the end of the arm. So if you're crashing a lot, the motors are nice and protected. The stack in here, as I said, it's F722 flight controller. The ESC is the 32-bit ESC, and it is BLA32, and it is that firmware that everyone complains about. It's the, I guess, pre-release or some sort of pre-factory version or whatever. Now, I haven't had any issues with that. Any of the 32-bit ESCs that I've tested with that firmware, I think I've tested now since BL32, since that project went belly up. I've tested 3 or 4 of these ESCs without any issues. Of course, there's always a one-off. Someone's out there probably has had a problem, but I personally have not had any issues with this one. So they're continuing to use these, which, I would prefer that they would go back to the 8-bit ESCs with BlueJ firmware, but I think that basically for 5-inch, I think the 32-bit ESCs still have the best performance on a 5-inch, which is why they're sticking with these. But again, it may still have some lurking bugs in there, so something to be aware of for those of you that are really concerned about that. For the front here, you got this nice TPU port for the front area to protect you from frontal crashes, so it doesn't chew up the metal camera cage and the carbon fiber in the front. Of course, I believe this design is pretty much the same as the 03 version, but they have just now updated the camera cage area for the 04 Pro, which is the much larger camera, and then with these new silicone hardware here for vibration dampening. And I didn't get any vibration or jello in my footage. You'll see that in the narrated flight. And then you have your mount here in the back for the 04 air unit. That's all TPU here. And I believe the receiver is underneath the air unit here. It's kind of hidden. Oh yeah, actually you can kind of see it right there. It's zip tied to the bottom plate right there with a little button there. It's accessible, but I just use the standard Express LRS binding routine, just plugging in, unplugging 3 times, and then binding it to my radio, no problem. XT60 there, built into the top plates, and just plug it in. It's pretty nice. And then these little antennas just pop out, and then if you want to store it back in the box, you can just pull these out and then lay them flat inside the box. Now the motors on here are the same as they've been for years. In fact, the version that I tested from 3 years ago with the Vista had these exact same motors. There's these SpeedX motors, and they're 2107.5, 1960 kV. They're the exact same motors. They haven't changed, surprisingly, in 3 years. Pretty sure the 03 versions had the same motors as well. I'd be surprised if they did switch to something else and then came back. And if you watch that video of the one I made from 3 years ago on the Mark 5, I thought that this particular motor with the GoPro was a little bit too much weight for this size motor. I just felt it was a little bit unresponsive. But of course, now with the 04 Pro and this setup here where the prop's out of view, I'm not flying a GoPro. And I flew it in the lighter setup here, and I realized that with the lighter setup now, the flight performance is a lot better. And if you are going to get this, I would recommend getting the 04 version with the basically props out of view for cinematic flying and no GoPro, because that's going to give you the best performance. I think that if you are going to go with the X-style frame with the GoPro on this motor, what you're going to want to do is probably get a really good battery, maybe a slightly smaller battery. I used a 1400 here. I mean, you go down to like a 1050. They recommend a 1050 to a 1550, so I would try and keep the weight down, because this motor on a heavier weight doesn't really have great responsiveness on the lower end of the throttle. But what it does have is like a really good punch out. Once you get the throttle above 50% and to like 100%, then that's where all the power band is in the upper end of the throttle range on this particular motor, especially if the weight's heavier. So that's why I say it's kind of a little unresponsive if you're trying to do more like low throttle maneuvers and like maybe proximity flying. This is probably not the best motor. I personally like 2306 size motors instead of this sort of taller and narrower motor. This 2107.5 is taller, so you're going to get more top end like power. The power is going to be in the top end of the throttle range, above 50%. So just something to keep in mind. Some people actually like that. So I think that's kind of why this motor has been around for a really long time, because a lot of people actually like flying that way. I personally don't. So if you want more control in the lower end of the throttle range, say like 20 to 35%, then you probably want to go with like something with a 2306 motor. But if you are really hard on the throttle and you typically fly in the say 65 to 90% throttle range, and this motor is going to be like pretty much perfect for you because you're going to be just banging on the throttle. Of course, your flight time is going to be pretty short with that kind of flying. All right, so here is how much the quad weighs just by itself. No battery, 444 grams, and then this is the GNB 1400. And now all together we're at 672. So yeah, this is no GoPro. And so yeah, 444 grams is a little bit on the heavier side with like all the TPU parts, and this frame is kind of on the beefier side. So keep that in mind. If you are going to be, again, if you're going to be flying with the GoPro, you want to, keep the weight in check. All right, so last thing to talk about before I show you the narrated flight is the beta flight settings out of the box. I fly everything exactly the way it came from the factory. I just add my own rates, and so, which are pretty close to factory. But yeah, basically it comes pre-tuned out of the box. There's no need for you to change anything or update to the latest beta flight. It does come with like 442, I believe, on here. I think the latest is 443. I may be mistaken on that one. Just I'm putting up the screen grabs from the beta flight configurator. And so everything is tuned out of the box, and it's a pretty good tune. So I was flying in really strong winds, and it held up really well. And I doubt anyone can do a better job. But if you're an expert tuner, of course, by all means, tune it to your heart's content. But if you're, just starting out and you don't really know what you're doing, I would recommend not touching any of the settings. Just fly it as is. You're going to find that it's going to work pretty well. And I would, if you feel like it's not flying well, then maybe adjust your rates, or maybe perhaps look at the how heavy it is. Maybe switch to a different battery, something like that would be things I would look for before you start flashing things. So definitely don't recommend any flashing. Everything comes out of the box, pretty much perfect, and it's going to, I think, work well for about 90-95% of you guys. All right, so enough talking here. Let's go ahead and take you right to the narrated flight, and you can see how it flies. All right, so pretty windy right now. Let's see how this does. Stock tune, I put my own rates in here, and it's pretty loud, so bring it closer here. It's a 5-inch, so if you're wondering, can you fly it around people and not attract attention, the answer would be no. You're going to attract attention, so be aware of that. And it is pretty smooth from the goggle footage I'm looking at. Tune seems alright for a dead cat in this kind of wind. But I think for those of you that are primarily looking for a hardcore freestyler, I would recommend the X style frame instead of the dead cat style. It's just going to have an overall better feel. The dead cat has a little bit of a slight bit of a wobble feel, although it doesn't really show in the footage. I don't see it in the goggles, but I can kind of feel it in the sticks. But that's normal for a dead cat. Now, I haven't reviewed this series in a while. The last Mark5 I reviewed was 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, and that was the Vista version. I missed all the 03 versions. I think there was 2 03 versions, and the Vista version just had the X-style frame with the GoPro mount. Same motors, pretty similar ESC setup, if I remember right. And this is much better with this lighter setup with no GoPro on top. And if you go back and watch that old video of mine, you'll hear me talk about that. The 2107.5 motor, I think, is going to be better for this setup with no GoPro and just the 04 camera. And then you get obviously really nice image quality out of this one. It's a nice flyer. but very noisy. Nice little power loop there. I mean, even though it's dead cat, it'll still do all your basic freestyle tricks. It's just has some different tendencies to obviously get the camera or to get the props out of the view of the camera. And I am in the wide field of view here, 4x3. I don't see the props at all. I don't fly ultra wide 16x9. So if you guys are wondering about props in view in that setting, pretty sure it's not going to show up, but that is, I think, a slightly bit wider. I'm not 100% sure. But this is actually wide enough for what I want in terms of the field of view. The wide with the gyro flow stretching it to 16x9 is pretty wide in my opinion. This field of view 4x3 is, I think, the full sensor, if I'm not mistaken. But you can only do gyro flow in wide and not ultra wide, so 4x3 ultra wide is kind of useless in my opinion. I guess you could use rock steady and then crop the top and bottom, I suppose. I don't know. I'm sure some people probably do that, but I think that's actually a lower field of view if I'm not mistaken. Check my 04 review. I think I covered all the field of views in that video, if I remember right. But yeah, it's a nice cruiser. And let's see here. I have full satellite lock, it looks like. Let's see here. How many satellites do I have? It has the distance, altitude. Oh, for some reason, the number of satellites is not showing. Interesting. It does have a lock. The LRS receiver is looking pretty good there. Not that far away, of course. Let's go a little further and see how that reception looks over here. Very windy, although it is not showing anywhere in the video footage. I'm just standing over here. I'm just getting pushed around. So negative 70 dB. Yeah. So for 250 milliwatts, I'm flying with my Radio Master Pocket, of course. Receiver's working totally fine. Let's get down a little bit lower here. And still 60 megabits. Yeah, 04 is amazing. You can just pretty much go anywhere and you just get perfect video. Range and penetration is fantastic on pretty much anything as long as it's set up correctly. I've seen some bad setups. People don't attach the antennas correctly, or they have like some third-party antennas that don't work right, and you get bad video. So just be aware that you do have to set it up correctly. And this one is out of the box perfect. Yeah, so obviously I'm going to get really nice 4K footage here, and I am going to color grade it, so I am using the D-Log-M color profile, so this will be color graded, of course. 10-bit video. In my opinion, I think now better than GoPro. I'm sure there's going to be people that disagree. If you do, let me know. But I've done lots of comparisons with GoPro footage, and this is, I think, just has a lot more flexibility. You know, obviously, if you want to fly different frame rates, of course, I only fly 4K 60. And then, of course, then you need an external camera, but that is not my use case. So, wow, it is really windy. I'm not sure if you can hear that. Those are my pants that are flopping in the wind here. I can hear it, but it is very, very windy for some reason. But this thing is handling the wind like a champ. But it's the thing, like if you're flying a 5-inch, it is not really going to blink an eye, bat an eye for this kind of wind. I'm going to go upwind here. Still no problem. Yeah, the tune is really good. It's not shaking at all. I think my standard rates are a little bit. I think I could add maybe like a lower rate.
just to make it smoother, I just have a kind of a standard set of rates that I just fly for pretty much everything, but for cinematic flying, I could probably bring the rates down even more, and maybe add a little more expo, but I think once you see the gyro flow, stabilized footage, all those little micro jerks that I'm seeing here, just from my own stick movements, they're just going to go away. You'll be able to see that in the footage. But yeah, let's look at the flight time here. Where are we at? almost 8 minutes. Wow, it's crazy. Really? 8 minutes? That long? Wow. Okay, I'm at 3.5 volts. I have a 1400 milliamp hour stick that's on here from GND. It's a new one that I'm testing, and I'm at 3.5 volts, and yeah, okay. I think that's good enough. I don't want to kill this battery, so I'm gonna bring it on in. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Talk to you guys later.